How'd this whole concept come about?
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Well, it's based very loosely on a story that happened with me and my wife Meredith. I was working at the time about sort of 5-6 years ago with a band called One Direction that are reasonably well known.
Yes.
And I'm making sort of a few videos for them, documentaries, etc. And one of the members of the band, Harry Styles, asked if he wouldn't mind staying, we could put him up for a couple of weeks and he would stay in our attic. And I was like, well, I don't think that's really possible. My spare room is very small. There's only an air mattress. And he was like, no, it'll be fine. I'll stay for a few days. And I asked my wife, Mary, and said, would that be OK? And she was like, as long as it's only for a couple of weeks. And in the end, on and off, he was living with us for about 18 months to 2 years. And he became a great house guest and a real big part of our family. So fast forward sort of 6 or 7 years, we never really told anybody about it, in truth. No one ever knew he lived with us. And I was chatting with Jonathan Berry, who's one of the EPs of the show, and with Harry too, and we were thinking, well, that's actually a really funny idea for a sitcom. The idea that you'd have a 30-something couple with a pop star living in the attic and the dynamics that can give you and the storylines it can give you. And then we realised that the actual truth of what happened in our lives was actually far too boring to ever really make a sitcom about. Yeah. Because truthfully, we would just sit on the couch in our pants watching TV. And so therefore, we partnered up with Tim McAuliffe and Austin Earl, two incredible showrunners and brilliant producers and writers, and together we've created this show. I often say, well, you know, people always ask, well, how much of it is based in reality? How much has it really happened? And unfortunately, the boring answer is very little indeed. And part of the reason I say that is because I think that as a show, we need a license to create stories about anything and everybody. And if we were saying that sort of Cooper was exactly like Harry, that would actually limit us in what we could do. So the truth of it is, Harry's never hung upside down in a photo shoot in his life. And I don't think he would ever agree to. So it's just a place for comedy. And what it really gives us is a beautiful show about marriage. And a couple that really get along and that are really in love, and that at mid-30s suddenly feel, well, actually, maybe I'm getting a bit old. And you don't realise that until you see a beautiful, youthful person in your house. Maybe that's the only bit. Maybe that's the only bit that is a little bit true.
So this show is all about house guests coming into your house. This is for the whole cast and producers, do you actually like house guests coming over? Are you a good host?
I'm a great host,
Okay.
but I don't want you there. You won't know it. You're gonna think that you can stay forever, but inside, I want you to go.
Same for you, David?
Me, you'll know that I want you. I just. Well, I'm one of those guys. Yeah, that's the. So what are you guys about to do?
You just come to the room brushing your teeth.
Yep. Well, what are you guys doing? What else are you guys doing tonight? You taking that to go?
Yeah.
What's going on? No. That's me talking to my mother. Mom, you getting up?
Now, Damon, how involved are you in the scripts when you see the scripts?
I mean, I read them and then I say the words.
Okay. All right. Great. I know some actors are in the writer's room, but
sometimes. I mean, I'm gonna do it more, but I trust these guys. You know, I trust them. I think they make really great scripts, great stories, great characters too. Great character development, so I don't feel like I have to do too much. I like to improvise when it's like tape night, but aside from that.
Do you guys get to improvise?
Yeah. This is super
collaborative. A lot of what we
collaborative.
end up using is exactly what they've improvised. It's amazing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hate it, but...
You spent all the time on these words. See what's on the page.
How was it for you seeing what happened at your house, loosely based, but when you saw it on screen, and you saw it for the first time when it was done, the first episode was done, how'd that make you feel?
Yeah, it's really exciting. It's incredibly bizarre. There's no doubt about it. I think that Damon Wayans Jr. and me aren't that similar. So maybe that is, some days it's like looking in a mirror when I look at Damon. But no, it's always amazing when you sort of come up with a concept with these guys and you see it on screen. It's a very exciting thing for all three of us, for Mary, for Harry, and for me. And yeah, I do find it utterly bizarre. I sort of see posters around town saying "Happy Together" and sort of, you know, the couch that you've probably seen. They all sat on the sofa, and it is a very strange feeling to see a sitcom that is based on our lives. It was Jewish New Year on Monday and Tuesday, so I walked to synagogue with my wife, and my parents are in town as well. They're very good house guests, by the way. Oh, good. And I literally had probably the most Hollywood moment of my entire life, considering I said I was going to be here for like 6 months to set up a show and then I was going to leave. And here I am 3.5 years later, and I was walking to synagogue, and as I walked into synagogue, I turned around, and literally right opposite the door to the synagogue was the biggest Happy Together poster you'd ever see. And I turned to Meredith and I looked up and I was like, Meredith, this is one of the weirdest of our life.
But it felt great, I'm sure.
Yeah, it does. It feels really good because I think the show's really good. And I think that what feels lovely about it is that so often on television, especially in comedies really, marriages are reflected as sort of like, oh, her indoors, don't tell her I'm doing this, and oh, you know, you clean up after your mess. And a lot of it is like those sort of corny relationships where they don't get along. And I think that this is ultimately, yes, of course, it's about a pop star living in an attic, but actually that wouldn't sustain. That wouldn't be able to be on 8:30 prime time on CBS. You know, it's a premise that we've, with Tim and Austin, have made into this beautiful show that's actually about what it's like to be in a happy marriage, and it's about marrying your best friend, and it's about a connection, and it's about how you grow a little bit older together. And I think that is probably true. My wife might disagree, but I think it is.
Damon and Amber, you go to a club in the show. Mm-hmm. You come back and you're just destroyed. Your body's falling apart. You don't know where you're at. What's the first real life moment that happened to you where you felt like, oh my God, you did something, you're like, I'm getting old. I can't do this anymore.
The first, oh God, that was years ago. I truly thought that I was kind of cool still until I met Felix. Because I feel like we're like the same age. And then I talk to him and I'm like, oh no. He's so young and I'm so old and I don't know anything that's cool anymore. And yeah, he's always referencing things like, did you see that video? And I'm like, no, I don't use the internet like that.
I have a problem. You're the normal one.
No, you're normal. Apparently the kids, they watch the YouTube. Yeah. I
have a genuine problem.
Can you still go out and hit the clubs, Damon?
Me? Yeah. I mean, I can.
Okay.
It's just the next day is really like the hard. That's when I'm
days.
like, oh, I'm in my 30s. And then like, when you drink a little too much and it doesn't really hit you until you like go home and like it's quiet. You get that little ring in your ear, like all the bad music you just listened to.
Why am I breathing so hard?
And why is my mouth just full of spit? You know what I'm talking about? When you get the mouth sweats. Like, you spit in the toilet like, here we go. Everyone knows that feeling, right?
Oh, man. The little one.
Yeah, the No? Okay, no? All right. Yeah.
How does being on an active show when you're actually shooting it help your stand-up? Because I know you tour while you're shooting this show. Do you feel like is there an advantage of doing that? Do you feel?
It's the only similarity to me is just the fact that you're getting either instant gratification or instant judgment. Like the laughs, they're either laughing hard or they're not laughing. I feel like a lot of other stuff is different though. Like with stand-up, it's all my words, so I know exactly when people are gonna laugh. With this show, it's like you don't know what's gonna make the audience crack up, and then it kind of like you have to adjust your rhythm. Because you'll be ready to say more lines, and people are like still like dying at something that you didn't even think was funny. Like, oh, they laughed at that. Okay, but it's like you didn't even let me get to the good part of the joke. Like they're laughing at the setups.
I got
you. So so that's I mean, I'm going to use whatever, fame I get from this show to help with my stand-up. If you like me on Happy Together, then come see me at Zanies.